and welcome to a new review. This time we're looking at a phono amplifier. Now, if you're not too sure about phono amplifiers, what they are, how they work, what's the best for you, then check out my phono amplifier buyer's guide. I'll put a little link up yonder and you can check that one out at your leisure. But in this particular video, we're looking at £1,000 worth of phono amplifier. This one is from Vertere. It's called the Phono 1, a fairly simple, straightforward name, and it's a pretty straightforward phono amplifier. It's quite dinky, smallish footprint, solid in design, and that £1,000 price point, it seems a bit of a coincidence, doesn't it? Almost as if the company was aiming for that price. And I asked the company about that and they replied, and I quote, "The target price was £1,000, giving scope for a good looking case and excellent component choice. Had the component choice necessitated a retail price of £1,100, then this would have been the price." So the phono amp is design centric and not price centric. That is, it's design first and not price first, which is a good thing. It means that this particular phono amplifier is not led by the marketing department. Now, I've said that this particular phono amplifier is relatively small in nature. That was a conscious decision. This is a bit of a Goldilocks design because the nature, the size of the chassis was built to surround the size of the circuit boards. So a smaller chassis would have had issues with fitting all the components in and also providing adequate shielding for certain components. And any larger, and you would have had issues with vibration and resonance. So that's a brief introduction on the outside of the Phono 1. But I think before we go any further, I think we need to take a closer look. And welcome to the closer look section for the Vertere Phono 1 phono amplifier. And we've talked a little bit about the outside, the actual chassis. Let's talk inside. Let's discuss the innards. Now, I talked to the owner designer Touraj, and he told me that the innards, the inside of the Phono 1 is op-amp based. He said, and I quote, "There are op-amps and there are op-amps. Some are amazingly good and some less good, but even more important is the implementation. Circuit design is an area which Vertere are very careful not to disclose much information about. Proper implementation of any circuit is as crucial as the actual design itself." I did ask Touraj if the Phono 1 was designed with any character built in, and was told that the Phono 1 was built with neutrality in mind, but with a little character added, so as not to make the sound boring or uninteresting. He added that the Phono 1 had to be as engaging, in quotes, as the source material. The core interface of the Phono 1 is pretty standard in terms of the usual inputs and outputs that run from your turntable and to your amplifier, as you can see on the rear of the Phono 1 here. Now let's jump about a little bit, and on the far right you can see an IEC power socket. This is welcome in case you might wish to upgrade your mains cable. Right next to that is a power rocker switch. To the left of that rocker switch is an intriguing three-way Phono PCB ground management switch. This is for you to experiment with to find the lowest earth hum in your hi-fi chain, and it's nice to have a choice of 3 settings. Highly unusual and very welcome indeed is a rare inclusion in the shape of a chassis ground knob, which you can see here. We'll be taking a look at this in the sound quality section later on. Underneath now are a host of dip switches to configure the Phono 1 for your cartridge. Able to handle moving magnet or moving coil, the Phono 1 has 12 gain settings ranging from 40.2 decibels to 62.8 decibels. There are 15 loading options from 78 ohms to 47k, and there are also 9 capacitance settings. The latter is relatively unusual and not found in many competing designs around this price point. On the front is a simple yet satisfyingly clunky on-off switch. In the normal low-ish light of a typical listening room, this blinding white power light is pretty powerful. I would recommend covering this force of nature with a piece of black tape or blue tack, spanning 210mm by 235 by 55mm and weighing in at just 2 kilograms. There's 3 choices of front panel color plates available: silver, black, or the one I tested, orange. Now, before I launch into the sonic personality of this phono amplifier, a quick overview of setting up this, or in fact any phono amplifier. Firstly, if you want to get the most from your hi-fi, ignore the spec sheets. Most phono amplifier manuals tell you to read the spec sheet for your cartridge and input the same settings from that sheet into your phono amplifier. Now, if you do that, if you just transfer those specs to your phono amp, you'll have a pretty workable phono amplifier sound. It'll sound fine, but your sound won't be honed, it won't be tweaked to perfection, and it certainly won't fly in sonic terms. Hence, I ended up with a loading of 78 ohms. That was the minimum figure, and I really wish there was a lower figure available from the Phono 1. That's one of my criticisms of this particular design. I wish it would go lower than 78 ohms. I also selected a minimum gain of 45.4 decibels and a capacitance of 0.69. But I would not recommend those figures to you. So how do you set up your phono amplifier? Well, I'm not going to go into details here because I've rambled on long enough and everyone will start to fall asleep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that information in the description below. So check out those points if you'd like to know more. So in a nutshell, that is the Vertere Phono 1 phono amplifier in all its glory. But how does this thing sound? Well, let's go to the sound quality section and we'll find out. And welcome back to the sound quality tests for the Vertere Phono 1 phono amplifier. I began those tests with a Jamaican folk song from the early 20th century, and that song is Linstead Market, sung by the King Singers from their 1971 Polydor LP, Encore. This song features complex harmonies, piano, percussion and upright bass. Any phono amplifier tackling this one needs to infuse the soundstage with lots of space. Any sense of claustrophobia will kill this song stone dead. And another reason I used this particular LP was those complex harmonies. They were ideal to test the capacitance settings of this particular amplifier, because when the capacitance is wrong, you get a harshness and you get a shouty feeling from the harmony vocals. But again, look in the description below and I talk more there about setting up the capacitance as well as the gain and the loading. So what was my first impressions? Well, despite the lack of that loading figure I mentioned earlier, I was very impressed with the Phono 1, and I was impressed with the amount of air and space that was infused into the soundstage. It moved around the voices and the instruments, and there was that constant sense of movement. It also encouraged the dynamic range. So what I mean by that is there was lots of space for vocals and instruments to pull back into fragile and delicate mode if required, and then push forward to a belting crescendo if needed. And the Phono 1 took note and had capacity for both of those extremes. During this time, I felt that the vocals had an efficient focus throughout this track. Vocals moved with an impressive agility here, starting and stopping on a pinhead in exactly the same way that the cartoon Roadrunner does when he zooms to a twanging stop. The accuracy of the vocal delivery helped the pace of the music. You never felt any sense of dragging or smudging in the bass, for example. The space around the soundstage also helped the collection of detail. So edges of instruments were easily sought by the ear, which meant that more music could be heard, and a greater level of insight could be experienced too. One that is not really that bass-centric. The lower frequencies were pretty tight and honed, adding an extra degree of power around the lower end. I was also happy to hear a more organic bass response. So when I heard the strings of the upright bass being plucked, there was more resonance there. There were more shades as well. You could hear the middle bits of notes. It wasn't just the beginning of the string pluck and then the end all of a sudden. There was that middle bit. You could hear the gradation of the note moving from the initial pluck throughout the tone and then the reverb echo bit at the very end. I then moved to more dynamic fare, and we're talking about rather experimental electronica from 2002. This is an 8-track release on the Scam label by an outfit called Team Doyobi, called DFO Bad, full of beats and beeps, clicks and distortion. Frankly, the Phono One handled the lot with some aplomb. In fact, it seemed to be thoroughly enjoying itself, from the deep bass throbs to the quite atonal blips and clicks that chattered in the background. The Phono One managed to keep pace with the lot, maintaining a strict precision throughout the performance, but allowing the music to roam around the soundstage. Now, whether the music hit the ears in a jagged fashion or as a wall of bass which ended in a sticky mess, the Phono One not only kept pace but handled these dynamic shifts with some ease. It did so but kept the dynamic ceiling high, so this track always had headroom to leap and bound. Energy was maintained at all times. Now, one of the most exciting features on this particular design, and it might be a surprise to some, was that little ground knob at the back of the chassis ground. You don't find this option on many Phono amplifiers, many components at all, to be honest with you. I use something called an RF router from Russ Andrews, and I will put a link in the description. Basically, it drains noise from the chassis areas of components, and I have this thing connected to just about every component in my hi-fi chain. And what does it do? Well, it lowers the noise floor. So for the Phono One, I was easily able to connect my RF router into the rear of the Phono One. As I say, if you're wondering what on earth I'm babbling on about, check out that link, as I say, in the description, and it will explain the whys and the wherefores. But I repeat, big thumbs up to Vertere for providing this option in the first place. And hooking it up to the RF router really did improve the final sound. When hooked up, I heard a dramatic reduction in high frequency noise from the Phono One. The upper mids became smoother, more relaxed, while opening up further to encourage insight within the upper mid-range. I highly recommend owners of the Phono One to invest in such an accessory to maximize Phono One performance. Vertere also supply a neat little set of shaped Sorbothane feet with a felt lining on the top. There are 4 of these feet in all. They arrive in a dinky little metal case, and I tried them underneath the Phono One. Vertere was kind enough to send them anyway, so I thought I'd give them a go. I placed all 4 of these feet under the chassis of the Phono One itself, as opposed to under the feet of the Phono One, and I found further sonic improvements. The mids smoothed out still further and became calm and at ease. Upper mid-range detail, such as percussive rim shots, increased their precision, the strike of each shot being crisp yet detailed. Again, I heartily recommend the addition of these feet to all Phono One owners. And why am I dwelling on these anti-noise solutions for this Phono amplifier? Well, that's because Phono amplifiers in particular are subject to a host of various noise, whether it's high frequency noise of whatever type, RFI or whatever, vibration and so on. The issue is that all of this noise veils detail. So the more noise you can get rid of, the lower the noise floor, the more detail that gets through to your ears. And as I say, of all the components in a hi-fi chain, the phono amplifier bit seems to hold the most of this horrible stuff. So it's actually worth spending time and effort on the phono amplifier itself to lower that noise floor. Now, while there's a host of ways to reduce noise, I've just given you 2 examples of improving the sound of your phono amplifier. So how would I conclude the review of the Vertere Phono 1 phono amplifier? Presented as a neat and compact build, the Vertere Phono 1 phono amp offers a host of features and options that allows you to tweak your hi-fi system to your heart's content. The addition of the chassis ground is a very useful bonus. In sound terms, the Phono 1 offers energy, precision, and accuracy, while allowing music to roam across the frequencies without restriction. As such, the Phono 1 is an impressive design and deserves your attention. And that's it, folks. I am done. Thank you very much for staying with me to the end of this video, and thank you too for your support. Please don't forget to, if you haven't done this already, please don't forget to hit the like and also subscribe buttons below. Check out the description for the installation advice I mentioned earlier, and also for a host of links. I have a Facebook group you're welcome to join. I have a Patreon page with exclusive editorial within. I have all kinds of other social media links. Don't forget my website, which is packed with hundreds, thousands of pieces of editorial that never makes it into this channel. You'll have a whale of a time. It covers hi-fi hardware, it covers features, there's interviews on there, there's vinyl and CD, all kinds of stuff. And I'll be back next week with another video. So stay with me, because I'd love to have your company. And until that time, bye-bye for now.